All right. Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. All right. A couple of months ago, a colleague of ours, a network engineer in our hospital up in Sweden, was about to do a ISSU upgrade of a Cat 9K distribution switch with the help of DNA Center. And it didn't really work that well at that time. So we wondered what went wrong. But we figured it out, so we'll get back to this issue later on in this presentation. So welcome everybody to the session called How we use DNA Center in Region Varmland to level up. So this is the agenda for today. First, we're going to introduce ourselves, who we are here and where we come from, and our organization in Sweden, what we do. And then we're going to tell you more about our IT operations and the challenges, and to give you some context about how we use DNA Center. And then David here is going to tell you more about our network infrastructure, and so you get some more context about how we use DNA Center. And then the main part is about the different use cases that we have going to describe for you, how we use DNA Center and what kind of value it provides us. And finally, we're going to wrap up with some insights and the final thoughts, share some mistakes and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so who are we on stage here? My name is Fredrik. I work as an IT operations manager in Region Varmland. I'm going to tell you more about Region Varmland soon. So my unit works a lot with the infrastructure, like data center and network and so on. I'm a network engineer. Been working about 20 years with Cisco technologies and mainly Wi-Fi. When I'm not working, I spend a lot of time in the forest with my dog, doing some deer hunting. Yeah.
What's the name of the dog?
The dog's name is Fia, and she's about this size, weighing about 8 kilos.
All right.
Yeah, over to you, David.
Yeah, hi, my name is David Jarpestam, and I'm an experienced network engineer in Region Varmland. So in the last couple of years, I've been practicing my skills in DNA Center, and I'm specializing in routing and switching, data centers, all the distributions layers. Well, I'm not only the team lead and the Scrum Master for the network team, but I'm also been the pivotal role in implementing the use of DNA Center. I can't wait to share my findings and what not to do with the DNA Center and how to use it, and my mistakes and so on. Anyway, when I'm not dominating the IT world, I'm a father of two and enjoy spending time with my family. I even built my own e-mountain bike.
And how fast is this bike?
Well, the legal maximum speed limit in Sweden is 25 kilometers per hour, but if I get my wind in the back and so on, it tops about 50, so yeah. It's not entirely legal. So.
Yeah, not only an IT nerd then.
No.
All right. Yeah. What about Region Varmland? It's where is it? It's both a geographical area, a county in Sweden, but also the name of our organization. And I guess you know your geography well. This is Upper Europe, and we have Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And the red triangle is where our county is here. We have a border to Norway and a big lake in the south, and so on. You will see some of the pictures in DNA Center later on in the site hierarchy as well. Yeah. So Värmland is it's dominated by large forests with a lot of wildlife in. We have elks, deers, moose, and even wolves as well, and also a lot of lakes and rivers. So during the summertime you can find a lot of German tourists and Dutch tourists canoeing, rafting, or doing something like that. And the white elk up there is actually quite unique in the western part of our county. It's about 100 of them, and they're not albinos, so they actually lack a substance called melanine, so they don't produce like the right kind of pigment. But we're actually quite civilized as well. This is a picture from Karlstad. That's the provincial capital in Varmland, with about 100,000 citizens, and we have a university and tech industry, and this is where we both come from and live. Well, what about the organization Region Varmland, where we both work? Region Varmland is a publicly funded healthcare organization. We do a lot of healthcare, but also public transport, some regional development, like some schools and culture development. And but I reckon the vast part of our operations is related to healthcare. We have 3 hospitals and a lot of different sites where we do healthcare activities. And a big focus for us now is, of course, security and high availability, and especially the latest year due to the changed kind of threat landscape. So IT-wise, we spend a lot of time hardening the network and trying to improve the robustness and so on, working with segmentation. So how many internet lines do we have now?
Well, we have about like 5 different internet lines separating different services. So the guest production, school interns, special hospital connection as well to other hospitals. And I think like 3 or 4 of them are also redundant across our data centers. So
yeah. So I have a focus on security. This is a picture of our main site in Karlstad. It is a major hospital, which is right now undergoing a lot of reconstruction and putting up new buildings. And this is actually when we build the new buildings here, we also use the plug-and-play feature in DNA Center to make the process smooth to deploy new switches. We'll tell you more about this in a while. So what about the IT operations and the challenges we face here? We are about 120 employees at the IT department. And it's different kind of roles, of course, like system engineers, and we also have architects and project managers and developers and technicians. So we take care of daily operations, but we also try to adapt, try to transform the various business needs to IT consequences and digital solutions. So it's a heavy focus now on security, of course. If we drill down to my unit, we are responsible for the infrastructure delivery in terms of data center networking, but also client solutions and telephony. This is just a little part of the people here, the network and data center folks. So we do the 2nd line and 3rd line operations. Not only operations, we're also responsible for strategy and to develop our platforms to match the changed needs all the time. One thing that really inspires me is that we have now transformed our internal business to work in
agile,
inspired by agile ideas instead. So we work in 2-week sprints, and that's really good for us. Yeah. So now, Dave, you're going to tell us more about the network team here.
Yeah. So the network team, you can see on the picture, is a really happy team. About 7 engineers. We are responsible for the in-network infrastructure, and we're divided in separate groups: Wi-Fi, WAN, and access connections, and distribution, and so on. And we make sure everything is up to date regarding images and service contracts and so on. I can actually tell you a story. Not too long ago, year 2016, we had this new site. We set it up. We installed, I don't know if you heard about instant access 6800 switches. I don't know if anyone are familiar with fixed switches here. I know you use a special line card in a distribution switch that feeds the brain to the switches. And suddenly, this line card was end of life. So we were standing there with a site with 35 switches with no service contract. So, so we needed to act pretty fast and swap out all of these switches. So it's one use case we use the plug and play actually. So it's good to have control over your devices in your inventory.
Yes. Yeah. Ska vi...
Någonting mer?
Nej, vi kör vidare.
No.
Yeah.
So what do we have? Our network infrastructure is based on a typical hierarchical Cisco network design. We have a core, a distribution, and access. But of course, it's a mix with all the new devices. We have like 2960X, for example, and some newer ones, 92 and 9K series from Cisco. We have actually got some help from Cisco to validate our design.
Like 5 years ago, we used Cisco Advanced Services to help us to do a design review and align ourselves with the best practices. That was really helpful for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now in our core we have a set of 9600 chassis-based catalyst switches, and in the distribution we're refreshing to 9500, and then 92 and 9300 in the access layers, depending on the needs on different use cases. Cisco ICE, it's 3655 right now, and it's a 6-node cluster that we're running. About 2,500 endpoints, and 16,000 endpoints and 2,500 network devices.
Yeah.
And all of these devices are imported in the DNA center. I would say the most important or the best to import is the wireless LAN controller. Right now we have an older one, it's Brownfield Series 8540, that we assume will be changed to 9800 controller. So when you import these devices, you get a full assurance in the DNA center. So let's have a look at our DNA center dashboard. Some of you guys maybe already have DNA center up and running, and you don't have it. This is how the landing page looks. So this is a really great view of your network. You have the health of the network devices, wireless clients, wired clients, and then the critical issues. And these two boxes here, I think, is, in my opinion, is the best to have a quick look at every day I start with work or during the day, and so on. You also get some help from the DNA center based on baselines and so on. We'll deep more into the assurance part later regarding the health. But what to think about when you implement DNA center, or if you have like Cisco Prime right now, it's to have a good logical structure based on, it could be like geographical areas, or depending on your customers or sites, that you do like some groups, and then you have a hierarchy. Depending on those groups, you can add your unique network profiles and the network settings per site. And that it's real helpful when you're like implementing SDA or adding WLAN profiles and so on. So this is Varmland again, our county in Sweden, and all our sites.
Yeah. And I have to just the white elks can be they can be observed in this area close to the border to Norway if you're interested in.
And this is our main capital again, Karlstad, with all our sites. So it's a little bit familiar with Prime, maybe, but you can add all the devices, sites on a map with your coordinates.
All right. Next up.
So let's deep dive into our use cases. That's the interesting part.
Now we're going to enter the different use cases. We have to give you some more understanding of how we use DNA Center and what kind of value it brings to us, and hopefully you will get some inspiration here. And we have divided this into two areas. First, we're going to talk about the network assurance part with different use cases, how we use it, and then into network automation with plug and play and templates and so on. So, you're going to...
So the network assurance part in DNA Center is one of the most valuable things with DNA Center. You get the health of your network and clients and so on. Here in the picture you can see Björn, he's working in the help desk. So we got the help desk to work with DNA Center as well. They do the initial troubleshooting, and they get the phone call from the customer or the client complaining on whatever, and you can log into the portal and see, no, it's fine. So in the dashboard, you can see, for example, the network devices. You have router, core, distribution, access, and so on. And if you have any problems, it will show up in the dashboard. If you deep dive more into the assurance dashboard, next slide.
I just want to add something here. A couple of years ago, our first line help desk, they didn't do basically any kind of troubleshooting regarding network issues. They just passed on tickets to the network team. But now, since they have learned doing the first initial troubleshooting part, they can actually solve some of the things themselves and kind of offload us and also get a better, give the end users a better service here. So that's really good.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a snippet of the client dashboard in DNA Center. When you click on the assurance dashboard, you can see the overall status, network client, applications, and so on. For example, here you have client onboarding times. You have RSSI, signal strength, and then noise SNR, for example. It's a really good way. You can deep dive on different sites. Right now we're looking in the global level, so in the hierarchy. That's why I say it's really important to have a good hierarchy in the DNA Center. If we continue to the client view, for example, right now we're looking at an iPad, and this is the client 360 view dashboard. You can see in the top of the picture you have the latest 24 hours, how this client has connected to the network, which kind of device it is, and the health score based on different like signal strengths and so on, and if it's on board having any issues. Which kind of operating system? Right now it's an iPad 11 OS, IP address and VLAN, access point, and so on. And what I really like about this, this is that DNA Center give you example showing any issues related to this client. So right now we have a P3 issue that's automatically created from DNA Center, and you can change those priorities to a P1 or P2 or P3, whatever is you're preferring. And right now this client is exhibiting sticky behavior on an access point. Those who are familiar with Wi-Fi knows that it's really hard to make sure clients are changing to other APs and so on. So if you click on this issue, you will actually get some help from DNA Center on what to do. So here you can see the example of the problem. You have a map of the floor, our access points, and a description of the problem. So it says here that the client is associated to a typical AP, which has a weaker signal. It should have roamed to another one. So how to solve this? Get 2 suggested actions from the DNA Center. So it says, if available, increase roaming aggressiveness within the client driver or update the client driver. So that's actually what we have done in Region Varmland. I did go through all our iPads and see none of them was on the latest version. So I made sure they pushed out a newer image.
And I can add something here as well as an old Wi-Fi engineer. This is really good because earlier we have to use a lot of low-level kind of information and debugs to get into these kind of conclusions, but now we get these hints correlated from DNA Center right ahead. Then perhaps it's not the truth, but it's a good way ahead. It's a really good way.
Yeah. So if you go back to the client 360 view again.
Tillbaka eller?
Nej, fram. Here. And here you can see I marked a tab called iOS Analytics. Depending on the driver or network card on the device, you'll get even more insight from DNA Center. So if you click on the iOS Analytics tab, you'll get more information about which access points the client sees. So here you can see which neighboring access points this client sees at the moment, and what's the signal strength, RSSI, And in this example, we have access points on the level 2 and the level 3 and level 4. So it's hearing across the whole building, actually. So it's really important when you're planning your Wi-Fi to have a good, not too much interfering.
No. And this information is coming from the 8.11k, I think, how the client reports how it sees the different access points. It's really nice. Yeah. All right, there are some other nice features. You know, these classical coverage maps, they go back to the VCS era, I think, many years ago. But now in DNA Center, we have this 3D model as well, which can give you perhaps some more understanding of how the RF environment might be. So it's really nice. We have just started looking into this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some other features, the AI analytics part here is you can baseline the network, so you can see trends over time. And in this example, it's we're viewing at the channel utilization. And in this particular area, where it's not our building, so we share it with a lot of different other people. So we don't have control over the space, and it's really messy here. It's red and almost not usable.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard to do something.
You can look on average and different values. And this is the max value, and you can choose SNR or whatever in a drop-down menu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on to network automation. This is the other part here, and we're going to talk about how we can use DNA Center to work more efficiently, to save time, and to reduce human error by not typing in things like this, like we did in the past. And also how we can use template to provision configuration across the environment to make it fast. And finally, into the software management issue as well, which I was talking about in the beginning here. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. So when you have messed up your network and you need your backup, so you start there. What I like with DNA Center is as soon as you have added all your devices to their inventory, you have all the latest configuration in the inventory. You can just click on the device and see your configuration of the device. So, but what about changes? If you or someone else did a change for a couple of weeks ago and don't remember why, or something like that, or if DNA Center is unavailable, you cannot access this inventory. What can you do then? So first we'll look at something called config drift in DNA Center. That's a feature I like a lot. It compares two different versions of on different dates, comparing what have you done and or added or removed since the last configuration change. So in this example, we added a VLANs and some VLAN interface, and we're looking at the specific date, comparing. So I like this a lot, actually.
Yeah, we had some issue a couple of weeks ago. There was some config change in an environment, and you were talking, who has changed this, and no one wanted to say it was me. But it was easy to identify the change and also who did it.
Yeah, correct.
That's good.
All right. I can also tell you about one more example from a real life experience. Have you heard about VTP? I manually configured a switch without the plug-and-play feature I'll talk about later, because I'm so self-confident, adding a line-by-line switch, and then connecting it to our local university. Everything was up and running as it should, and then like a couple of months later, suddenly two VLANs was removed, and we added like 400 new VLANs, just like that. And I logged into the switch, and why is this VLAN removed? So I added a VLAN. Okay, fine. And then I was thinking, why is it removed? And then I checked the VLAN database, and I did see that we had a lot of new VLANs. So I used this config drift to find the old version and recovered it, and then I reset the BTP mode to transparent, as it should be.
As it should be, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
You go on.
So let's see. Next slide.
Yeah.
And what about if DNA Center is unavailable? So I recommend you to set up an external SFTP server for your config backup. If you don't have it already today, you can just put an IP address in SFT, and all of the devices will be pushed out daily. And you have your running startup and your VLAN database file in an external web server. So this is not configured as a default. I recommend you to set it up. All right.
Yeah, and this is, well, of course, we have a 3-node cluster, and it should be available, but in some kind of disaster recovery scenario, it's really nice to have configurations offline somehow. And in Sweden, we have a saying that's called, we would like to have hängslen and livrem. And it's called belt and braces, like this old guy here. We will have a belt and braces, just to be sure, just to have a plan B if something really weird happens. And this old guy is a Swedish finance minister 50 years ago called Gunnar Sträng. He really liked to have a plan B. So we as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a bit about plug and play. What's plug and play? Well, for us it's a function in DNA Center that let us automate provisioning of new switches, deploy new switches, to get them fast up and running, get the right software on it, and the right kind of standard configuration.
Yeah.
Not the VTPs.
And remove human errors, of course.
You remove human errors. Yeah. And we have been using it now for like a year or two, perhaps, something
roughly like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an example how we can save a lot of time instead of sitting with Notepad and building configurations, and perhaps there is a wrong, and you use a serial configuration in the switches and so on. So the plug and play function discovers new switches and verify compatibility, and then deploy appropriate configuration and so on, to make it easier.
So how do we use it here in Region Varmland? First of all, we use option 43 in our DHCP servers. I was trying out the plug and play function for like 1 year, and then I told my colleague to use it. It's really great. You get the license, you get the image, register the device to your smart account, and so on in one sweep. And my colleagues are trying out this function. It doesn't work, David. What's the problem? And I showed them it worked for me, and then they try again, it doesn't work. So I ripped my hair off, why doesn't it work? So then, like some 1 year later, another colleague, hey David, why is this option 43 only configured on one of the DHCP servers in our cluster? So one question went answered, and the other one wasn't answered. So that's really important to configure it in your cluster on both servers. Yeah. Anyway, you can also use the plug and play startup VLAN to have more control on which type of VLAN the switch will boot up on. So that's the one thing you'll configure on your seed switch. Yeah, and one more example regarding those fixed switches. It's about like 35 switches of them, and not too long ago I mounted all of the switches in the racks and just connected one uplink cable, and then go back to DNA Center and push out the image and the basic configuration. So it's a really simple if you multiply the switches, if you have a lot of changing at the same time.
Yeah.
So what are you pushing out to your switches? You use templates in DNA Center. You can, first of all, in the plug and play scenario, you have a more basic configuration with your standard configuration or whatever. And then the next step is to push out a more advanced one. So in this example, you can see some VLANs and variables. So you can add variables for different IDs for VLANs, for example, depending on the sites. And you can have a consistent name, or and so on. I recommend that you use tags in the DNA Center. Tags is something you add to your template, and then you use this tag on the switch. So in my case, I did a template and I pushed it out. What happened? It pushed it out on every switch. So if you do it more controlled way, you put a tag on the template and put a tag on the switch, and then it will only see this template. And then you can do some more advanced scripting with Jinja and so on, and what else if stuff like that. You can show the next picture. So here's an example from Region Varmland. He's actually here somewhere. Tobias. He's in the end of the audience. So if you have any, if you want to learn more about this example here, you can talk with Tobias. And then it's something built in DNA Center over there. So yeah, you can do a lot of advanced examples with the templates. So yeah, I recommend to look into that.
Yeah.
All right. So another thing that's good in healthcare is to have an up-to-date image on your switches. Make sure you don't have any vulnerabilities on your switches, and up-to-date software and so on. So I recommend to use the software image management tool. It's much easier than Prime, I think. You have more internal checks and so on. It's handles the switches really well.
Now we feel pretty safe with using DNA Center for software updates, don't we?
Yeah. It's try different methods, HTTP or SCCP, and then do some internal checks. And if it doesn't work, it rollbacks automatically. So it's much safer. We had the incident we talked about earlier in the beginning. We have this older colleague. He's been working.
Peter.
He's been working like 30 plus years in a network engineer. He's more of the old school guy, you know. He types with one finger on the keyboard and then looks at the screen. His eye is wrong. He remove everything and start over again, one finger. So he asked me, "Hey David, how do you do this in-service software upgrade using DNA Center? I like to update the switches sequentially." So it's a quite important building with some operation center, and we have this Catalyst 9500 distribution switches. So I showed him, you do like this, you type on this button here, and next, finish. Okay. So he was supposed to do the upgrade of the switches during the weekend, and I asked him the next Monday, but how did it go? He shook his head.
Yes.
It was a big network outage, and it was down because both switches was booted at the same time. So what did he forget? So you have in DNA Center, you just click on this button here, and then it will do it sequentially. So then you get this big green button, ECSU. So I made a recorder video, and I told him, but he didn't find it.
Yeah. So what's the lesson learned here to do?
Yeah, lesson learned, read the manual. And ask your colleagues if you're unsure.
Yeah. Perhaps you could also give Cisco some input to make it more intuitive as well, so it's not that easy to make it the non-ISSU.
If you go back one slide or two slides, you can see here it says ISSU validation successful. So some guys maybe think, all right, it's ready.
Yeah.
And don't think about this gray box there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, we're approaching already the final at 10 minutes. Yeah, that's all right. Some insights and final thoughts. And well, some of them are quite obvious, but the first one, in our case, we used Cisco customer experience in the beginning when we deployed DNA Center 3 years ago. Yeah, so they were a good help for us. So they, it's a good help. And the second one, I used TAC. Yeah, we had some issues, So it's a quite obvious one to use TAC, of course, and they can be very helpful.
You get this big button in DNA Center, upgrade now. It says get a new release. If you click it, sometimes it's updating, and sometimes it's not updating and crashing. So,
yeah.
But you get good help from Cisco. So.
Yes. Will you talk on Cisco?
Yeah, and about the logical site structure, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important that you have a good logical site structure because you can add your templates and so on, and then profiles. Yeah, it's more convenient. And you can do Docker apps with the DNA Center as well. In our case, we're using Thousand Eyes. You maybe heard it here on the live. It's really helpful. And then you have the end of X, that's end of life or end of service and so on. You get an inventory in DNA Center if your devices are running out on service contracts. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we're a bit ahead of the schedule here. So yeah, do you have any questions here?
Crystal clear.
Crystal clear, yeah. And if you want to come up to us afterwards, we'll be here. And if you have any feedback or questions, or if it's perhaps something you would like to share with us as well. So, all right. Thank you very much.